Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. I've got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison, and God forbid you end up in prison, you want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So before I start, let me apologize. I'm completely deaf in my right ear. I lost hearing about 4 days ago. Been sick. Sickest I've been that I can ever remember. I'm holding it together pretty well right now because I have to do this video, but I can't keep anything down. It's like The Exorcist, so my voice just sounds a little bit off, not as steady as usual. I apologize. So the stupidest stuff I saw people get put in prison for, there's a few that come to mind. There's a long list of it, and the stupidest stuff that people got put in prison for, when I think about that, what comes to my mind are the injustices that have happened to people. People getting way more time than they should have for stupid stuff they shouldn't have got that much time for. The first person that comes to mind was an older man named Patton. Patton got 5 years for 2 pounds of weed. There was a judge in Salem, Virginia that swore that he was going to hand out 1,000,000 years before he retired. Any judge that says that should be made not a judge. They should get taken out of position because that's stupid. I mean, it's a dick measuring contest to see how many years you can give out, how many years of people's lives you can take. I mean, that is absolutely insane and absurd. Okay, so Patton, I became friends with him. He'd done fed time back in his 20s. He hadn't been in trouble in like 25, 30 years. And he asked the judge for a program, said he hadn't been in trouble in 20 years. And the judge said, "Mr. Patton, you haven't been caught in 20 years. He said, "Well, can I get some kind of a program or something? I'm in my 50s, I've got diabetes." And he says, "I've got a program for you, Mr. Patton. It's called the Virginia State Penitentiary. You'll be spending 5 years there." Gave him 5 years for 2 pounds. It's like the maximum sentence, I believe. And icing on the cake for how he got set up was his son I believe it was both of his sons actually set him up. He went to go meet his sons, and I can't remember if it was him giving it to his sons. I think his sons were gave him the money or something, and he threw it on the ground or something. But his sons set him up. Yeah, set up their own dad. Over weed. I mean, it's crazy that people are even locked up for that anymore. It's absolutely absurd. I personally, never liked smoking it. Wasn't my thing. Just didn't like it. I liked everything else. Like Theo Vaughn, my favorite type of weed is cocaine. I wasn't much for weed, but every other type of illegal powder that came across the border, I was pretty fond of. Anyway, the second person I would have to definitely say would be Wood, who you've heard me tell a number of stories about. He's in the story about the incident with the blood leader. He's in the story coolest prison fight I've ever seen. He's the only person I've ever seen to throw down his crutches and take off and break somebody's nose and just say screw it. He's got a boot on, he's got a messed up leg, but he said screw it. Time to fight, let's go. And that was wild. I mean, prison isn't cool. It's time you never get back and stuff like that. But man, that was a wild moment. When you see somebody who's got a boot on, like a medical boot, like you hurt your foot, they throw down their crutches and take off on somebody who said something they didn't like, and just said screw it. And he did good too. He did good until the dude got a hold of him and dumped him on the ground. Afterwards, I mean, the other dude at the end was beating on him when he was turtled up on the ground. But if you looked at the two of them after the fight was over, Wood didn't have a mark on him. Some people say he lost because the other guy, if it was a fight to the end, to see which one of us is going to make it, I don't think Wood would have been the one to win it because he wasn't winning at the end. Eventually, the guy got, he got a bear hug on him and he dumped him on the concrete hard. But anyway, Wood was a felon, and he was fishing. He's from Tennessee, West Virginia, one of the two. I believe Tennessee. He's lived in Virginia too. But anyway, last time I checked, he's still in prison. It's a shame. He keeps getting back involved in addiction, and it really sucks. He's a really, I mean, that dude was like my brother. I mean, for real. I mean, he's a good dude. But some people, like myself, have addiction issues, and man, it's rough. It's something that it's just what it is, and whenever it's time, you got to make it through it. But anyway, he was fishing, and a game warden showed up. And for y'all who live in the city, I never went fishing, hunting. Despite my accent, what I might sound like. Roanoke is a city, like it's house side by side. I've never been hunting ever. I've been fishing like once or twice when I went to go stay with my cousin who lived in the country. But no, I'm not like an outdoorsman. Like, despite the accent, I'm not like redneck stereotype or whatever. There's a woman who watched me who was from Tennessee when I was little, and it's the best we can figure why I've got the accent that I do. Because nobody else in my family has it. Nobody in Roanoke has it at all. I'm the only one who gets stuck with this accent. And the ironic thing about that too is in Roanoke everybody calls me country, and then I went to go live with my aunt in Grundy, which is in the country, and everybody there calls me city boy. So I didn't fit in anywhere. That's why I call myself Edward Scissorhands. I'm like the weirdo that lived up on the hill, that came down to check out what's going on in the world, realized I didn't like it, went back up on the hill, said I'll just hang out by myself. I don't really like people too much, and that's pretty much how life is now. But anyway, the game wardens, from having family and friends that do hunt and hearing all about it, game wardens, from what I have been told, have more authority than the actual police. They are notorious for just being pricks, dumping your stuff out on the ground, and being able to go through anything. So he's fishing. He's got a tackle box that belonged to his granddad, I believe it was, and he's just fishing. He doesn't mean any harm. This game warden shows up, runs his name, sees he's a felon, decides he's going to do an extra thorough check, and he dumps everything out of his tackle box. 2 bullets. 2 bullets he found. We've got 4 years for 2 bullets. Felon in possession of ammunition. He got 4 years for 2 bullets that were probably 30 years old that he had no clue were in that tackle box. Tell me that isn't wrong. Tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't. That's wrong. It's stupid. He should not have had to do any time for that. I mean, what's he going to do? Rig up some type of, like some mechanism with just the bullets? I mean, it's the stupidest thing ever. And likewise, there's another person. He's doing a good bit of prison time. He actually told on his stepdad, and he got it reduced, but he still got a couple decades because he was doing his thing big time. Was a guy who was selling speed, but a previous prison sentence, he ended up doing I think it was 3 or 4 years, because there was somebody he was in the car with, had a piece. I can't say the word. Certain words aren't liked on here, but had a piece in the trunk, and he was a passenger in the car. He didn't know that it was in there. The driver even told the police he didn't know that was back there. Said that in court, and he ended up getting 3 or 4 years, just for being in the car that there was a piece in the trunk. As a felon, I'm scared. I'm scary about that stuff. I see somebody with a piece of something, I'm gone. I'm out. Nope. I'm gone. I don't care if nobody's there. I don't care if there aren't any cameras. I don't care nothing. I'm gone. You aren't going to catch me breaking that law, because in the federal system, something you may or may not know, if I was to get involved with something like that, which I'm not, no, I would get 5-year mandatory minimum sentence since I'm a felon in the federal system. If it's a state charge, it's a different story. But it's pretty bogus, to be riding with a friend and you didn't know what he had in the trunk, and because of that, you end up losing 3 or 4 years of your life. I mean, that's crazy. That's another one that is pretty stupid. Now, another guy, this is probably the worst one. This guy was not a criminal at all. I've talked about him before. He was a truck driver, lived a good life, didn't do drugs, he was a truck driver. Now, his wife's friend that I guess they grew up with was a streetwalker. She approached him at a truck stop and asked him if she could hitch a ride. She had a friend with her, and he said, yeah. He said no at first. The first couple times they talked him into it, and he said, yeah, I'll give you a ride. Well, a state over, they pulled him over. The police found out they were basically streetwalkers, and since they were streetwalkers, and since one was underage, which he didn't know, he got 5 years and a lifetime on the registry for giving two hitchhikers a ride. How does that make sense? You know, that's stupid. I mean, they said he didn't do nothing with them, to them, nothing of the sort. He was just giving them a ride. That's what it says on paper. But because they were streetwalkers, they were known in the business, and he gave them a ride, he ended up getting 5 years. Now, the last one, which I'm going to bring up, is myself. I've done a million things to get a good amount of time, and ultimately, I ended up getting 8 years. They asked for 15 years for having a drug dealer live in my apartment. Now, I quit selling drugs when I found out when I knew I had indictments that were going to be coming out. I went into hiding. I went on the run. And how I ended up getting arrested was I called 911 because somebody was overdosing whose life I was saving in my apartment. I did CPR until they got there. Of course, they ran my name. I had warrants. I called 911 knowing that, but I wasn't going to let him die, you know. Meanwhile, a second person who had stopped at my apartment unannounced, I had no clue he was showing up until a random knock came at the door one night. I knew him from high school, so they tried to connect those dots, but luckily, Brian Goebel, the guy who I did CPR on, spoke up for me. If he had not spoken up, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't. I was facing 220 to life charges for something I didn't do. And I was getting notes in the jail, friends of the person who did sell it, telling me that I should take the charges, that I was young, and all this. And at first I was thinking about it, and there were actually a couple old convicts that were in my pod, and they told me, no. They said, you do not belong in here. You're not like the rest of the people in here, which, I mean, just because I'm nice doesn't mean that I wasn't a criminal. You know, it has nothing to do with it. I did belong in there. But they told me no. And two guys, Patton, the guy I told you about who got 5 years, he was one of them. Old white guy with the beard. Some people call him Santa Claus. And the other guy, Benji, stocky, short black dude from Franklin County, known street fighter. Dude can brawl. He can fight. And they both took me in a cell, and they gave me, like, yelling at me, talking to me, telling me, no, you are not going to mess your life up for this. Because they said, you're not like the other people in here, which, you know, made me feel good, but kind of bad. I didn't know how to take that. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I said, I didn't do it. Everybody who's saying that I did is lying because they're being coerced to lie. Which two of the witnesses in my case went to my mom's store during the time that I was in prison, and they apologized to my mom. And they told my mom, and I have multiple witnesses who were there at the time, that they were told, say that Spencer is the one who did this, or you're going to prison. Now, the two witnesses who were told to say that I did it, they were with the person who didn't make it, who passed away that particular night. So, while I saved Brian Goebel's life, they left the other guy, and he didn't make it. So, I saved a guy's life, and they asked for 15, and I got 8 years. They left their friend to pass away for fear of what they'd get in trouble for, and they got no time in exchange for telling a lie on me. Now, they charged me with Brian Goebel's overdose before they talked to Brian Goebel. They hadn't spoke to him, but they assumed it must be me. They had this, you know how like OJ, like stuff came back on him? It's kind of like that. Like, I had such a reputation for all the, I was wild, I was crazy, I did a lot of stupid stuff. You know, I had a little business recovering money for people that ripped off people. As long as they called me quick, I took half the money. They'd get half their money back. Put a few people, maybe possibly in the trunk of a car, and done some bad stuff. But at the time that everything happened, in which I got charged federally, I hadn't sold anything for like 6 or 9 months, and it's just I felt so awful for so long, and I still feel bad. It's awful that somebody passed, but I'm looking at this situation for what it is now, and I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm going to be making some recordings that are going to be on a few other people's phones. There's an agent that was really after me, and I'm going to make a lot of recordings, so just saying, just out of paranoia, if something were to happen to me, that they'll be there. That those will always be there. So, getting rid of me won't do them any good, I guess. So hopefully they see this and they know that. But anyway, just out of paranoia, they've got far-reaching, and it makes me nervous. But at the same time, I'm mad. I'm mad as can be about it because, I lost my 20s. I'm going to get everything made into videos with interviews of actual people who were there. I'm not going to do any talking in these videos for the most part. I'm going to let other people talk. And I'm going to let you guys form your own opinion on what you think about what happened. Nobody expected me to get traction on YouTube, to be a YouTuber. Nobody expected me to stay off of drugs. Nobody expected that I would be able to come back over a decade later and prove everything that happened was so wrong. So there's going to be some people that are, one person in particular, an agent, that's really going to be upset. And but it's what needs to happen. I'm gonna try to string it together so you guys can see it for what it was. But anyway, I do take responsibility for allowing a drug dealer to live with me. Yeah, I did that. Why did I do that? Okay, I quit selling because I knew I had indictments coming out, right? Didn't want to get any more dealing charges. But I'm still an addict. I still had a physical addiction. So I was forced to do a couple things. Keep dealing, get more charges, or lie to my family to get money, steal from people, innocent people, which, that's why I was a dealer before, was so I didn't do that. I figured keep it in the life. And it seemed like the lesser of all evils to rent out a room in my apartment to a dealer who in exchange would give me some drugs every day. Okay? So that seemed like I figured can't get in trouble for that, right? Wrong. I got a year in drug court, which is a program, for being a full-on drug dealer. And for being a hopeless addict who was broke, bottom of the barrel. For all the stories I've had where, I had a couple dollars, at the end when I went to prison, the time that I was on the run, I was so broken, hopeless, and helpless. There were times that I had more money and I fit in both pockets in a bag. But at the end, it was bad. It was terrible. I wasn't going to get more dealing charges, so I quit. And, I figured it couldn't hurt to rent a room in my apartment. I figured that way I wouldn't have to lie to my family, to try to get money, to get high. I wouldn't have to go out and steal from innocent people. I'm just giving a room up, and I get to support my addiction that way. And I got 8 years for that. They asked for 15. My lawyer asked for 0. They asked for 15. The judge gave me 8, which is halfway in the middle. 0, 15, met in the middle at 8. Gave me credit for my jail time, which was a state charge. He didn't have to do that, which was really nice. But I don't think that I should have spent my 20s in federal prison because I let a drug dealer have a room in my apartment. And just playing devil's advocate real quick, it's awful when anybody passes of an overdose. It's sad, but there are roughly 100,000 people that pass away in the U.S. each year from overdoses, right? If you were to prosecute every person that gave one of those people what they overdosed off of, and each of those people were to get the mandatory minimum of 20 years, in 18 months the federal prison system's population would double. Okay? What good does it do? The two people I met in prison that were in there for that weren't even dealers. They were people, they were party. One was a raver who gave it to some girl who was a daughter of somebody who was important in the military. The other guy was just an addict whose buddy kept bugging him over and over because he didn't have the connection he had, and he told him no the first 3 times. 4th time he told him yes. The guy ended up passing away. He ended up getting 20 mandatory. He actually got 25 because he went on. He tried to run from it. He was like 19 years old and being told he's going to spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Of course he went on the run. But something I noticed about it too, the two people that were in there for that were wealthy white people that most likely the reason that they charged them was to make a statement. We're taking a stand against drugs. Got one off the street. What did you do? You did nothing. Oh, sorry. I'm still listening. Here. There we go. Sorry. But what about my friends I grew up with that passed, that overdosed? How come nobody sought justice for them? Because my friends were hood trash, according to them. They weren't worth as much as the other people. I mean, think about that. You know, and it's awful, and I do feel awful for everything that did happen. But you got to look at this from a different sort of way. The war on drugs is a failed war, okay? Most of the people that I met in prison for selling drugs weren't dealers. They were middlemen who would take Joe and Jerry's money, and they'd get 50 from Joe, 100 from Jerry, take the 150 and get a discount for combining it with their dealer and make a couple bags for themselves. They weren't rich. They weren't, living high. They were supporting an addiction through middleman. And these are the people that are filling prisons up for the most part. The majority of people in prisons are not kingpins. They're hopeless addicts. And you're putting them in a place that's going to make them worse. I mean, the rehabilitation in prison, I took a corrections class in college while I was out on bond. Rehabilitation, I believe, was fourth on the list of the goals of prison. The first goal of prison is retribution, revenge for the victim, so they can feel better. And it's messed up, the whole priorities of it. It says in the college textbook, I need to get that book. I still have the book. It's at my mom's house. It's in her garage. I need to get the book, and I need to read out of it and show you how disgusting it is that college books teach how prisoners should be treated. They say that the healthcare in the prison system is a step below welfare. And it's just so open about how bad prisoners are supposed to be treated. There's no shame in it. Like, you'd be disgusted if you saw it. And yeah, there are people that are awful in prison that deserve it. There's a lot of people that are awful in prison that deserve it. But people with addiction, you can punish them 10 million times over. And if they don't get help, like mental health help with it, they're not going to quit. They're not going to get better. Of course, the person's got to want it, but if you don't provide them with a chance for mental health help, it's not going to get better. You can't just throw anger, rage, time, punishment at addiction and hope it goes away. That's not how it works. And it pisses me off. It's absurd. But anyway, it's a little bit of a rant. I'm feeling really awful. I've been feeling really awful the last couple of days. I do apologize. I'm trying to get through this without throwing up. I feel like I was going to throw up twice during this, so I'm sorry. I'm going to try to do a second video today anyway. See if I can get my bearings about me. But anyway, if you like the video, if you think I earned it, press the like button. If not, I don't even have the energy to do it. I'm walking like an old 90-year-old man across the room right now. I was able to keep down like half of a Gatorade Zero yesterday. I didn't eat nothing. It's rough. But anyway, if you liked the video, press the like button. If not, I'm sorry. Y'all have a good one.